The ultimate all-in-one electric homebrewing system is here. The new Grainfather G40 can produce up to 11 gallons of beer and features all the latest advancements in homebrewing technology, including wireless control so you can monitor your brew day from the Grainfather app. With an innovative new grain basket design that improves workflow, reaching mash efficiencies of 75% or more is easy. The 3300-watt heating element brings your wort to a boil quickly without any scorching, and the large hot plate filter guarantees that no unwanted grain matter or hop chub reaches your fermenter. Every G40 comes standard with a high-powered built-in pump that can handle temperatures over 200 degrees Fahrenheit and a full 3-year warranty that guarantees you'll be able to keep on brewing no matter what. The Grainfather G40 is available now at your favorite homebrew retailer or online at grainfather.com. Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Closed transfer tips, brewing, fermenting, and serving from a keg, and using glycol to cool your wort down to yeast pitching temps. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 286. Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com, click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call, leave us a voicemail, get a $25 gift card to 325-305-6107. I'm your host, Joshua Stewing. Today, I am joined by the Director of Operations at cmbecker.com over there, Mr. James Carlson. I'll fade the music out because in my ears, it is blaring. The generous Mr. Carlson, that pizza you got, let's shout out to Tomahawks in Comanche, Texas. Now, 0.00025% of our audience will ever make their way to Comanche, but if you do, there is such killer food here, dude. Like,
oh yeah,
Tomahawks, Guanajuatos, Harvest. There's actually really good eating here. I'm spoiled. And then when Liz cooks, obviously, when Liz cooks, it's even more.
That meal the other day.
Wasn't that incredible? So yeah, James hung out. Yeah, we'll start the small talk immediately. James, we got you out to the ranch. We did a brew day first off. You were here. Someone had to work and run the office, and that was you. You drew the short straw. My apologies, but you stayed here. But you came and joined us in the afternoon. Todd and I brewed with our buddy Jonathan Marut. He was on episode, I think, 266, or he was back in April. He was on the show and talking about Kvite yeast and pressure fermentation. So he's from Fort Worth, which is what, 2.5 hours away, give or take?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
We got him to come, and he did. And we got beer fermenting, and it started fermenting quick. We brewed on the Brautag 17 or 18 gallons, and we split that between 3 vessels. One had 3470, the lager yeast, under pressure in 90 plus degree temps. Then one was in the Spike Flex under pressure, but with Kvite yeast, Imperial's Loki. And then one was with Kvite yeast, but 65 degree controlled temps, and like in the closet, like for a pseudo lager. And Then we brewed on the Grainfather with Jonathan, a 5-gallon batch that we just put in a bucket with Kveik in the hot garage, no temperature control, no pressure at all. And that's going to be like he called it an American pale. I looked at the hop bill. I bet it's with the yeast at that higher end of the spectrum, all the citrus, I bet you it's super juicy. But yeah, it's semantics, right? We talked to Jonathan before where we've had commercial pale ales, quote unquote, and they're IPAs. Like they're punch you in they're punch you in the face, hoppy. Yeah, but that's probably what this is going to be. I'm actually excited about it. But we got you to come.
I am too.
In the afternoon. By the time you got there, most of the vessels were bubbling already, weren't they?
They were. They were going to town, and he actually brought a pilsner he did under pressure fermentation, warm pressure fermentation. It was really good.
Almost made us believers on the spot, right? We're
absolutely. But I mean, not to fumble with temperature control with lagers and do it and produce that kind of clean tasting beer. This is impressive.
Anvil sent me that fermenter king, which I'm super happy about. That thing is, this is the first time using it. It was super easy to put together. It seems like it's going to be a smash hit, and it can be game changing. Like you said, if I can brew lagers, or if anyone who is a snob wants to correct me and just say it's a pseudo lager because you're not at lager temps. But either way, if we can turn around with lager yeast, that 3470 or harvest, we didn't have any imperial. That's why we used the dry yeast because I didn't ask them for lager yeast, so it was my fault. Lack of prior preparation, whatever Todd says to me. It didn't though, because I didn't prior prepare, whatever. But so we use that 3470. If we can turn lager type beers like that around quick and without strict temperature control, it could be game changing. So we actually ordered some more plastic PET fermenters because we're going to try it here at the office and then at the barn in the future for different styles. I will say I'm going to throw Jonathan under the bus because he did it with the Kolsch, and that was the one thing he could have done to win me over and get in my heart. Like, this is what I'm doing forever. It wasn't quite a Kolsch. Like you tried it, and it was still delicious. It was great.
Oh yeah.
It was a very good blonde ale. It was a very
good lawnmower beer. Very good lawnmower beer.
But the gist of it was Jonathan is working on us and is very close to making us believers in this. The Kveik part is cool, and I'm excited to see how the Kveik specific ones turn out, but I'm most excited about that 3470 under pressure in the garage, because if that turns out as good as Jonathan's did, I'm going to be doing that a bunch for y'all. That's what I'm going to be brewing a bunch. So yeah, on the small talk, we have that. Oh, Todd. Surprise guys, you're watching. I'm at the throne of Todd's office. He has been, he had to go out of town. Unfortunately his wife had lost a uncle, I think a couple months ago.
Aunt, wasn't it?
Well, I don't remember. I know, one of her family members passed, and this was the only time everyone from across the country could get together to do a familial memorial service. And then one of her aunts is terminally ill as well. And that's who they're visiting today. And so, obviously the Garcia family's in our prayers and thoughts, and we hope they have safe travel. So at first, I think I had it in my notes like, oh, Todd's on vacation. And he was like, dude, this isn't a vacation. I was like, oh, now I feel like a jerk. But I did, though, take over his office. So I still got to be a jerk. What else do we have on here for the small talk? Oh, 4th of July beers. I want to publicly thank you for supplying the majority of beers I'm drinking on the 4th of July, dude. I realized on tap we have your Pilsner, which is Todd was so mad at how much I've had this week of the Pilsner on tap there. And you probably already went through your keg, right?
No, I still have some. Yeah.
It is so good. It is so crisp. And then your wheat lager, which I haven't had a pour from since you kegged it. And I'm waiting. I want to wait until it's settled and at the party. And I'll text you my honest, because you told me it turned out great, right? Like, you're happy.
Yeah, it's a good session beer. It's a good, easy drinking beer. So there's people out there that, really aren't into the hoppier beers or some of the craft homebrews. I think they'll like this one.
I think so too. And then we still have probably a gallon and a half of your alt. And so I think that's going to float quick. I think the alt will be the people pleaser. And we have Todd brewed that Galaxy Smash that we still have almost a full keg of, just because my pop and I aren't huge on IPA. But people who visit IPAs are a lot of people like them, right? If they're in craft beer, a lot of people like IPAs.
Sure.
So it'll be nice to have on tap for the 4th of July. But it got me thinking, I was like, all 4 of our beers on tap are all Brautag beers. They were all done here at the headquarters, besides the Galaxy Smash was done on the Brautag at the barn, which let me put the camera right on me and get up close. Pop, we need to brew on the Brautag too, man. James has been busting my chops too. Like, what do we got to do to get your dad brewing on a Brautag? And I was like, I'm going to give you his phone number and you can text him and ask him yourself why we're not.
I think we figured that one out. You just take one home and set it up in your garage, and it won't take very long. He'll figure out a place to put it at his.
We
place.
Did say that, and then as you were telling me that idea, I go, no, because then I'm going to keep it. And then my dad's, I'm going to say, too bad. Here's the G40, which is not knocking the wonderful G40. I just want to brew in 15-gallon batches. That's all I want, because I don't feel right. You're too nice. You keep giving me kegs, and I can't keep up brewing in 10-gallon batches. Todd, thankfully, is not nice, because he was like, oh, James gave you a keg. Okay, then you can give him the other one, and I'm not trading you. I was like, okay, yeah, sounds fair, bro. Sounds fair. So I want to brew in 15. And also, the Brautag, it's just fun. It feels... I romanticize stuff. I feel like a commercial brewer on a Brautag brew day. Like,
I do too.
You know what I mean? It's just, because it's the same process, right? At a different scale, but it's the same process. And I've actually been impressed. I'm not trying to digress too much before we get to feedback and questions. We've sold a few cooler brew over the last few weeks, and the popularity of those has been seemingly upticking. One of them reached out to me and said they bought it because they're trying to steadily grow into bigger batches. And I think the cooler system is a great step up from a 5-gallon to 10-gallon, or like the G40. That's been my favorite thing about the Grainfather G40 is brewing on a Grainfather. Jonathan controlled it on the brew day on Tuesday. For total transparency's sake, everybody, I did not really do a lot of the brewing. I did my whole shtick of like, I've got to set up the cameras and film. But Jonathan, he's brewed on them a ton. But I forgot how fun brewing on a little all-in-one was, because I haven't brewed on the G40 in a while, and the Grainfather's done it right. Like, those systems are so fun. But anyway, the people are brewing in bigger batches is what I'm getting at. It seems like the trend in our audience, people who reach out to us as customers or as listeners, a lot of people are like, I've been brewing 5-gallon batches. I'm ready. Like, I want to do more, 10 or 15. And I always push it to the Brautag. Like, you want that. I promise you. You want that.
Yeah, it's hard to do. I would suspect even brewing when I brew on the Brautag and then to go back to an all-in-one, kind of seems like the same. Maybe it's not, because it's been so long since I brewed on one, but it seems like there's about the same amount of time. But
right,
you get to brew quite a bit more.
Yeah. The only difference was because the recipe, we only did a 30-minute boil. But time-wise, and even I'd say even effort-wise, besides the literal difference of weight of lifting. I don't. The Brautag totally convinced me like I should be brewing in this size batches, and because it is worth my time. The ingredients, the rise of cost is kind of marginal from a 10-gallon batch to a 15-gallon batch, and the yield is just that much better. But also because I want to get in y'all's beer trade, like, officially.
Yeah, if you're swapping out it and there's 3 guys, then that's 3 kegs, so it works out perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, so yes, with all that being said, James and I've got a great show for y'all. We have sort of 4 questions. We have 3 questions and a listener feedback. So let me turn that up, and
it's time for listener feedback.
Listener feedback thing blew my ears out. Our listener feedback this week comes from our friend Anna Britt.
Hey there, gentlemen. This is Anna Britt. I've been brewing beer and listening to your show for a couple of years now. Big fan. I've got some listener feedback and a short question. Hopefully that doesn't break the rules. So my feedback is about pressure fermentation that y'all mentioned a few episodes ago. Lately, I have been fermenting in a corny keg and found the converted ball lock kegs that y'all sell are perfect for the job. And it's really easy to get into pressure fermentation if you're using a corny keg. I replaced the dip tube with a floating dip tube so that you can remove all the beer without disturbing the yeast cake, and simply remove the pressure release valve during fermentation. and put a sanitized piece of foil over the positive pressure from the CO2, make sure that nothing gets in the vessel. And then once the fermentation is close to finish, you put the PRV back in and then add a spunding valve set to your desired pressure. Let the fermentation finish off, and it's super easy to get a head start on carbonating your beer that way. There are a few tricks about types of yeast that you can use and which beers do better with pressure fermentation. So, Todd, if you ever have any questions about it, hit me up. Also kind of surprised, since y'all are the kings of kegs, that there aren't more keg fermenting accessories on your website, like the floating dip tubes or the spunding valve. But anyway, on to my question. Yeah. Now that y'all are no longer selling recipe kits on your website, I'm curious, where can I find all of your wonderful recipes, like the Lemon Drop Pilsner and any of James' great recipes, and anyone else's that made recipes for y'all on Homebrew Supply? Just curious where they went and if we can still look them up. Thanks so much for the excellent podcast. I find it super entertaining and helpful. Have a great day, y'all.
Thank you, Anna Britt, for submitting that. So, but on the feedback part, yeah, she got us. She got us. Yeah, and I shared it with Todd, and I was like, "Oh, do you not want me to share this? Because it kind of makes us look bad." He goes, "No, put it on because we deserve that." Like, and so Todd has told me I'm dedicated to. We're going to start carrying more fermentation stuff on the TED side, because this whole thing, the timing's just funny, right? Like, we're in this season right now of like experimentation. Let's do this, when we've been old dogs with old tricks for a long time. And now,
the pressure fermentation is perfect right now in Texas.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, not everyone has a second fridge or a fermentation chamber or whatever to do lagering or cold conditioning. Even if you're not lagering, just the cold conditioning, or a room that you feel comfortable keeping at 63 or 65 degrees all day long. That stuff's expensive, man, for air conditioning. It's not always cheap, but yeah. I agree. She has us there, and the tips are great. I was going to tell Anna Britt, the feedback's pretty recent, but it was before we had Jonathan Brew and all that, and I was going to tell her, look, I'm only like a week away from being an expert on this now, okay? So if Todd needs to ask anyone, he's going to ask me. But on the questions, the easy answer is I stopped publishing them on homebrewhappyhour.com because I just had so much stuff pile up on my plate. But that's where we've been housing our most popular recipes. If you go to homebrewhappyhour.com, there is a recipe section. Unfortunately, I think the most recent one was the Bohemian Pilsner, which was like from March. So I still need to upload. I was like, I'm going to upload one a month, and then I didn't. But if any recipe you want, the good thing is you can email Jay Carlson at homebrewhappyhour.com, or you can email me or just through social, which one you want. And we have a database of the PDFs. We have it on local drives and stuff. So if you're wanting to brew a specific one, hit us up. We were hoping, I don't know if you remember, James, when More Beer acquired the domain, we were hoping they would carry those, because we were trying to work out a Trub Club deal with them, and but they have so many recipes. They're like, no, we don't
want your puny
recipes. Basically, right? Like, we don't need y'all's recipes. What are you talking about? We have 5 million recipes. And how many did we have? I think we had 200 total on Homebrew Supply.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't it? And on Cat Connection, you yourself, for the original recipes, was it 35? How many was it? The original ones we came out the gate with, I want to say it was 30 or 35.
Something like that. I've got more than that on my Brewer's Friend profile.
Yeah. Well, you also, though, don't you make new profiles for every tweet you do on any given recipe?
Just so that I can keep everything straight.
And separate, so you know what you did that batch, right?
Right. Yeah. The list.
I know it's a lot, but
5-6 pages of recipes on
Of course
on
you
Brewer's
do.
Friend.
And I won't spoil it for anybody, but if James shares it with you, you'll also see he has the best avatar on Brewer's Friend.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
It gives me nightmares. Yep. So that should be enough inspiration for y'all to hit him up for a recipe that he'll just share.
And that lemon drop Pilsner wasn't a bad recipe. A lot of people at HomebrewCon loved it.
So good. Well,
so that'd be a good one to do.
Todd floated. You made a batch, or did Todd make the batch? Which one of y'all just made a batch this year?
It was Todd.
It was
I
Todd.
did a batch earlier, and then he did one.
Okay. I'll just say, I thought I've been drinking it a bunch lately. He floated his quick because everyone loved it. Everyone. Yeah, you're right. Your recipe's been real popular. And we did it as an option on Trub Club in maybe late 2019 or early 2020. And the people who chose it were like, "This is incredible! Like, who would have thunk, right?" Because
it's the title's kind of misleading. The title is related to the type of hops in the kit.
Totally,
it in no way, shape, or form tastes like a lemon.
It's not a lemonade pilsner. No,
no. It's not. It's just the lemon drop pilsner. I don't know. What do you think about those hops? I mean, they say there's subtle notes of lemon, but I never really got a whole lot of that.
I think it's subtle, but it's subtle in like a lemongrass kind of way. Where it's not
exactly. That's the perfect way to explain.
Yeah, like to me,
lemongrass,
that's what
not lemon.
Right. That's how it came to me. And I remember, wasn't that the beer Lorena gave you grief for at first? Like that.
Oh yeah, she would not try it. She does not like the lemon drop hops.
That's not a pilsner. That's not a pilsner.
Yeah. And she just would not try it. And finally, eventually, I think we talked to her, convinced her even just tasting it, and she was like, yeah,
at HomebrewCon. It was HomebrewCon.
I do like it.
Yeah, she had to admit it. And then and then I thought at club night that night, oh, where do you get her to admit she likes Fuggles? Nope, she did not.
I don't think we could ever do that.
No, that one she legitimately hates. Yours was more conceptual. She's like, on paper, I shouldn't do this. That's not a Pilsner, lemon drop. But then she had it. No, I bet you she's had enough Fuggles to know, screw those. Those suck. But anyway, like I said, we do have now 3 more questions. Oh, wait, we already did answer her question part. Yeah, homebrewhappyhour.com. Look at the recipe section. If there's a specific one you want, email Joshua@homebrewhappyhour.com. Message us through social. That's probably the quickest way. Or text me 325-305-6107 with your name, email, and which recipe you're wanting, and we'll get you hooked up. But anyways, we do have 3 additional questions for y'all this week. Our first one is a voicemail from our buddy Patrick from Maine.
Hey guys, Patrick in Maine. Josh, love to say good things about you, but I don't think you can help me here. My question is about closed transfers. And you see, I know you do open transfers.
Yep.
So I recently started doing 10-gallon batches with the Cooler Brew system. Love it. And but that means transferring my stainless steel fermenter into 2 5-gallon kegs. How do I know when one's full and switch it over? That's the general gist. I do have a clear hose going to the kegs, but it's the blue gas hose going back up into the fermenter. So I don't know, maybe I should switch. But anyway, anything you can provide would be helpful. Thank you.
Patrick, thank you for the question. Longtime friend of the show. We've taken his questions before, and that's why he feels comfortable dogging on me, I guess. I don't know. But no, I welcome it. It's funny. What you transfer from Conicals straight to the keg all the time. I've seen it with Todd. And let me throw Todd under the bus before I get a real answer from you. One time when he was kegging a Kolsch that we brewed, the one that he says he helped with, but he didn't really. And Lorena was up there, and he was transferring from it, and he walked away, and all of a sudden it was overflowing, like from the post, like it came out. That's not the best way to tell if the keg's full, right? What is your method of determining, yes, it's good, now go on to the next?
Well, there's two things you can do. If you're cold crashing and you have a chiller like we're lucky enough to do, you can see the cold line in the keg, and that's usually the easiest way. Is you can see it start to sweat through the keg. You'll have a condensation line where the liquid's coming up, and then you're thinking, well, but I don't have a chiller, so smarty pants, how do you do that now? Because he's doing actually a correct closed transfer. So he's got the gas line into water. He's purged his keg with CO2, so he's transferring from the Conical. And let's just say it's warm, and it's going into the keg from the liquid side, and then the liquid's coming up, and the only way to tell is it's going to come out of the gas tube side, which you probably don't want to do that. Well, I got a real simple option. Go to Walmart or go to Home Depot and just get a cheap bathroom scale. Now, what you want to do is you want to put 5 gallons in that keg of water, just 5 gallons of water. and then zero out. You want to zero that scale out and just put the whole thing on that scale and write that reading down. You can even write it on the keg. So you know that when you're filling it up, when you get to that, what is water, 8 pounds? So let's say it's going to read 42, 43 pounds. Once you get to that, you know exactly where you're at, because liquid always weighs the same for the most part for our purposes. Yeah. Then you know that you're full. And also you can pick it up and tell, you know, if it's super heavy, you know that you're getting close. I think I like the bathroom scale idea, because then you don't worry about pushing Wort into a bucket of water. Wouldn't really, don't think it'd hurt anything other than you're wasting beer. But those are my two suggestions on that.
That would be the easiest idea. Way. And people, I didn't realize too how utilized that is. People do that on their CO2 cylinders, where like they get the empty weight of a cylinder and what it should be full, and they just do the math as the weight goes down. You know, like, okay, so I'm roughly 3/4 full now, and people do that with their kegs all the time. I think. Isn't that how? What is is it Play-Doh, or what is the device that people put in their teasers that are circular to be able to read?
Yeah, all they are is just little scales.
That is right. Yeah,
and it's
with a cool heads-up display
inside the keg.
Yeah, with a cool heads-up display on your app, right? I mean, that's like they make it. Yeah, it's
bars utilize the same system. They can calculate costs. You know, they can connect that to their point of sale system, so they know that what they've spent, what they've taken in dollars, and they know what they've used as far as products. So they can calculate that night what the margins were on their beer and their waste factor and all that. I did the same thing with when I had a 16-gallon keg, and I always keep one in my kegerator. I actually got a bathroom scale with a remote display, and I had it zeroed out with the keg on it, empty keg on it. So I would mark that on the outside on the kegerator with the display, and I could always tell and see exactly where I was without ever opening up the door. I could see how much beer I had.
Nice. And like you said too, they're not expensive for
no, I think you can buy a simple bathroom scale at Amazon for $10.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, one that'll do what you need it to do in this case. Yeah, that's a brilliant. Yeah, I wonder I wonder. Patrick called me out. He knows. My dad and I still do open transfers as of right now. As I'm getting Conicals and stuff, and the ability to pressure, we'll probably start closed transferring just because it is easier at the end of the day, and a little more hygienic in regards to contaminants not having an opportunity to get in there, and oxidation really minimalized. Like the way we do it, I'm pretty confident we're not going to oxidate whatever.
Yeah, I don't. I purge the keg with CO2 from the liquid side.
Yeah,
and then I pop the vent. If I've got something already carbonated like this wheat beer, you have to nurse it, because you don't want to lose all that good natural carbonation that I put in it from when we do the diacetyl. I shut it all off and put the splunting valve on it, and just let it do its thing.
Yeah, and it does seem more to me. The more I sit and think about the process of how we transfer, my dad and I, and the more I'm like, it is more work, because I lost the little racking thing for the auto siphon, so I have to hold it the whole time. It's such a pain. And this is, guys, listen, I'm a privileged American male. I understand that before you write in and go, oh, you had to hold it for 7 minutes. How dare you? Yeah, I'm inconvenienced. That is exactly what I'm admitting right now. Holding it, and then when the bucket gets, or if it's from a bucket or a carboy, having to turn it to make sure we don't get trub in there. Did I say trub? I meant trub. So we don't get any trub in there.
We call it trub around here.
That's right. We call it trub. And but a closed one, especially if like in the Anvil fermenter can with the floating dip tube, I don't really got to worry about the trub. I can just start transferring, and it's going to follow that liquid line all the way. And I liked the clear visibility of that one too. Do you ever, in a Conical, worry about not being able to see in? I guess there's no reason you'd have to see in, because you can do all the
it's
testing.
Got a sample valve, so I mean the only thing I'm worried about is the taste.
Exactly.
Yeah, and for the most part, clarity. I know that wheat beer that I kegged last Friday, out filtered, and sometimes it can kind of be difficult when you're trying to filter carbonated beer. It takes a little longer too because it was wheat and the yeast was not as flocculent. I can't even say that word today. Flocculent.
I just said it fast.
Normal because I was having to use another style. I didn't have any imperial to use on this one. So it slowed the process down, but it is possible with a 1 micron filter to filter carbonated beer. It just takes a little longer. I think that very last keg, the one you're taking home, that was the very last keg. The first didn't take quite as long. That's the one I gave Todd. The second one took a little longer than when I have at home. And that last one, I think it took about 20 minutes for it to completely fill.
Wow, dang! But it did its job, right? And
I was able to get. I think that's almost full. It went to the vent. I think is.
I love it. But yeah, so your first recommendation, if it's cold and you can see the cold line, that's the easiest way.
Yeah, you can see the condensation line, the liquid line from the outside because just the ambient temperature is warmer, and this is cold crashed beer.
Right,
you can see it immediately.
Yeah, but even if you were doing that, it's not. Man, I like it. I'm endorsing your second idea of the scale. I like that. Because that is I feel more scientific in regards to like it's just math, right? And you're going to be extremely close to knowing precisely how much volume you filled up to when you have an understanding of the weight and what each one weighs, and it's full at this. And if you keep it on a scale, that's brilliant. And I guess I need to look into what those. I keep calling it Play-Doh. I don't remember if Play-Doh's the one that goes in the keg or if that's the little sensor thing in the teasers, but need to look into those and what those cost, because we might have people write in and go, no, Josh, here's how you really do it. This is the best way. And involving tech and toys. I know when we did the brew day, you got to see it. I think it's called an Easy Dens, that brewing a densometer. It wasn't a refractometer because refractometer requires light. This was that machine that pro brewers use as well. Todd ended up ordering one. He was a little inebriated. And it's what Jonathan brought, that you just get a syringe worth of wort and you put it in the machine and there's little vibrating things inside, and it has a really pretty simple interface app, and it tells you the gravity reading right there in real time. It tells you the temperature of the wort, and it's incredible.
Play-Doh is actually the airlock gravity meter.
Okay, see, and but you know what device I'm talking about. We'll figure out who makes that one. Being in the industry for almost 15 years, I should know this stuff off the top of my head, but no one ever said I was good at what I do for a living, friends. So anyway, to wrap up Patrick's question, if there are other people out there who y'all do it different ways and you have tips or more feedback that can help out Patrick, leave it as a voicemail to 325-305-6107. And for your troubles, we're going to give you a $25 gift card to Keg Connection if and when we play it on a future episode, because we want to hear from y'all. One of my favorite things about our community is the knowledge bank and sharing that everyone does, like in our Trub Club private Facebook group. And so when I get good feedback, I want to put it on the show. And again, we reward you for it because we value you as members of the Trub Club. So anyways, moving on to question number 2 was a text message from our buddy Hank using the hotline 325-305-6107. Hank wrote, Josh will understand where I'm coming from. Brewing, fermenting, and tapping from the same keg. Why can't I? He's calling me lazy, James, I think is what he's getting at. And I wrote a note. I don't know if you read the note that I wrote in there. Hank, I'm throwing you under the bus. He's also sent me numerous questions about how to brew with THC. So I don't know if that affected his text message. I don't want to make any assumptions or whatever. He was worried about it being a stupid question, and I was like, no, man, not stupid at all. But it's not stupid at all. I see people brewing in what we call kegels, like kettles, but made out of the old Sankey kegs. I've seen that before, right? Mm-hmm. Because they don't have. He specifically was asking, because I texted him back and like, no, man, not a dumb question at all. But are you talking about like a kegel? He goes, no, man, I'm talking about a corny keg. And I was like, I know obviously you'd have to remove the rubber bottom, right? Because they all come with rubber bottoms. They're rounded out bottoms. And once you did that, I guess you could make a stand to get a heat source underneath. I don't know. You tell me, James, is it the worst idea you've ever heard heard of someone brewing in a stainless steel corny keg? Is it possible? You're not going to get a full batch yield, though. You can't, right?
You could do a hot water heater element. Some of those you can even bend, and you could use a bulkhead fitting, and you could make an electric element in the bottom, and you could brew electrically. But you're right. You would have to make some kind of other type of stand. I don't know. When we were using the Pico Brew machine, if you remember, we were using a corny keg for the boil cycle, and that rubber held up pretty good. So
I don't remember that. Y'all did? No way.
Yeah. So that whole machine, what you did was you took, you had a corny keg, you had to cut an inch off the bottom of the dip tube, and then you loaded your water up, and you have to load it says on there, I can't remember. It's been years since I used it. 2 or 3 gallons of water, maybe even more. Maybe it was even 5. You have to give enough headspace for the boil cycle because it's pumping hot boiling wort through the system into the keg and back out. It circulates it. I think it does. It's been so long.
It has been a while. I was going to say, I have nothing to contribute to that because
the funny thing
is
the Pico Brew, the company that was making the machine, they bought our disconnects. And I thought, wow, that's fantastic. Supporting, because we assemble all these in Texas. We have our factory in Germany cast some of the components, and we have some components made here. We put them all together by hand. And we were at HomebrewCon, if you remember. We were talking to I can't even remember the gentleman's name. We were all having a beer.
Yeah, I remember. Was it Sean or Patrick? No, Patrick was on this show. I know who you're talking about. I mean, we went and had drinks with them. He hung out with us that whole first night. Yeah. Really good guy. Good guy. Yeah. Well,
come to find out, they had actually, because I had mentioned that we really appreciate you using their Becker. We make a really good product. We're all happy with the performance of the disconnects. And if you remember, he let it slip out that they had tried to use some disconnects from Asia, and when they hit the boil cycle, they literally melted off the posts.
They were melted. I do remember that conversation. Yeah.
They wouldn't survive. They would do everything, the mash and all that, but when it comes to the boil cycle, for some reason,
done. Yep.
It doesn't. The way I want to remember how that worked is it pumped a little bit of that hot wort back into the system for some reason, and it would do that. I know because it had to pass it through an element. So it's passing the wort through an element. It's continuously getting warmer and warmer and warmer. And once it hits temperature, that's how it works. Once it hits temperature, well, then it pumps it all into the keg, and then the cycle's over and you can run your cleaning cycle. Well, he had let it out that the disconnects that they tried to use that were, considerably less money than ours, they would literally fall off the posts. And can you imagine a mess like that? And you've got a machine pumping hot wort into a keg, and those connectors basically melt off the posts.
Yeah,
because
total
they can't
failure.
handle the heat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and CMB Schockenlagen has a patent. They have it's a closely held trade secret. It took them a long time to develop the right mix of plastics to make that work.
Yeah, and in the short side of that story is just like it was not a protective measure, just a quality measure of why they did it that way. Like you said, like the right kind of polymer and this or that to withhold it. Yeah. I mean, that's the same reason why with the y'all's faucets being used for bars that desire really, really, really cold dispensing temps, because they uphold in that environment. Yeah. So,
if you're wanting to, if you're wanting to use electric, I think you'd be fine. But I'm like you, Josh. I would be leery of the bottom, because it is possible epoxy doesn't like heat.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
That's the way they're attached.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, using the Pico Brew machine, I would say we didn't use it a whole lot. We brewed maybe a dozen batches of beer, but that keg sat upright right next to the machine on the stand. And I never saw any issue of the bottom wanting to come apart from the tank.
Yeah, and James, you're bringing up the CMB stuff because you're saying, like, make sure your equipment is going to uphold in the environment you're putting it through. If you're going to be transferring boiling wort and whatever, But Hank is going even simpler than that. He took a hit. What if we boil and don't transfer and ferment and serve from the same thing, which is what the only thing I could kind of think of was the Conical. Do you remember that Blickman product?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they still make it. That wasn't.
Yeah, they still do.
That wasn't for boil though. That was everything's after post boil. That where you transfer to it, you do your fermentation. It has a little insert thing. You put the corny keg in for the trub, and then when you're done with it, you just pull it out of there and you start serving from that. And it's kind of expensive. It's neat, but I don't. If you're gonna do the whole thing in one vessel. You're gonna. Do you have to do a floating dip tube when it comes to like? You can't leave your components in there during the boil, right? Like a floating dip tube.
I wouldn't think so.
Right?
I think that you could probably do extract a lot easier than you could.
And you could probably do it more to volume because again, if you do to be fair though, he was only talking about. No, I actually didn't get clarification. I have it in my notes here. He said brewing. You're not doing a mash. You're not going to do the mash in there, fashion a bucket, a grain basket that can fit in the lid's hole, pull it out, do your boil. Like, no, you'd have to at least have a mash tun that's separate from it if you're going to try this. I don't know. Here's what I would say, Hank. My serious answer. Go to Blickman Engineering, Blickman.com maybe, and look for the Conical. And that might be the thing you're looking for. Or like Anna Britt said in the feedback part, people without the Conical are still doing secondary or post boil. They're doing their fermentation and serving from the same vessel. That seems to be more common. If you're listening to the show, guys, and you're like, Josh, you idiot, I do brew. I do my boil and I do my fermentation and my serving from the same keg. Please leave a voicemail. I will play it. If it's a serious one, not just like trying to get a free $25 gift card. But if you have actual fee, I would love to hear that because I think Hank is on to me. He's had me figured out. He knows I'm a man of efficiency. And if I could figure out a way to do everything in one vessel, I would absolutely do it. Mainly because I'm lazy and cleaning one vessel only seems like a dream. But do you remember the Homebrew Con? No. Wait, it was Homebrew Con. The first one we went to, we weren't showing. We were walking. I believe it was in Baltimore. The one
Baltimore,
right? Baltimore. You, me, Nancy, and Todd. And remember, we were doing the podcast and we interviewed those people from what's the appliance maker? Whirlpool. They Whirlpool.
Yes, I remember
the
that.
Vessi.
Yeah, that was impressive.
That was like what Hank is describing. The Vessi was a sort of all-in-one. It was an all-in-one container, but it was modular, so you had to remove stuff here and there throughout the process. But I believe the Vessi is also kind of what Hank's talking about, where it was.
Yeah, it did everything. It had even had a trube dump.
Yes, it had.
You remember it had a really big, wide open ball valve to a container that was sealed.
Yep, and it was all housed in a heating and or cooling compartment to where when it was time to serve, you'd cold crash it down, and now it's a kegerator. And you pour off the. Unfortunately, now Vessi is still under Whirlpool, but it's like a sous vide machine now. If you go look up like Get Vessi, Vessi. I don't know if that's the website. It used to be. I got an ad for it on my Facebook the other day. I was like, that's not Vessi. Vessi was this massive thing. You remember the unit? We saw it in person.
Is it V or B?
V as in Vendetta. V for Vendetta. I've actually never seen that movie. But yeah, Vessi, they were the ones. Bessie would be the cow, but Vessi used to be like the all-in-one thing, but now it's like a sous vide wand, I believe. But anyways, Hank, now I'm the one looking like I'm choking up because I totally digressed from your question. But to wrap it up, we're going to need additional information from you as to what you mean by brewing, fermenting, and tapping from the same keg. But ultimately,
I'm looking at it right now. It's Brew Vide is now available on Indigo.
So it's like a sous vide thing, right?
It's a professional grade.
It's a wand. It's a wand, right?
Sous vide for brewing.
Yeah. So that's that's going to be the next thing too. Someone hits us up, but that's for more smaller batch stuff. But I've had people reach out and they use those wands for small batch brewing on the stovetop to keep your mash temp to equal. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool concept. We brew too big and we're brewing electrically to where it doesn't make sense to implement it here. But that'll be a whole different expert guest we have on the show at some point and maybe have them come to the ranch and do video content with. But anyways, Hank, Thank you so much, my friend, for submitting the question. I forgot to remind you after the first one, but when you leave a voicemail to 325-305-6107, we give you a $25 gift card to catconnection.com. But if you leave us a text or if you go to homebrewhappyhour.com and use that submission form at the top of the page, you still get a $15 gift card. Pretty good if you ask me. Our last question of this week came from our buddy Jonathan, not the one who came to the ranch. Different Jonathan, Jonathan H, using the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Jonathan H wrote, "This might be a stupid question. If I buy a glycol system for my Conical, do I still need to chill my Wort to pitching temps before transferring to the Conical? Couldn't I transfer into the Conical at any point, use the glycol to chill it down, and then pitch my yeast?" I have to admit, James, and Todd's not here, so he can't get mad at me. I helped Jonathan with he wrote into this. He wrote me as a customer writing this. And I go, you know what? Do you know what Homebrew Happy Hour is? He had no idea. I said, here's what you do. Because this is a question I've asked Todd, and he's never given me a good answer. I said, just write it in, and I told actually Jonathan to do a voicemail, and he goes, I don't like the sound of my voice. I was like, whatever, Jonathan. Just
I don't like the sound of my voice. So
that's why you don't listen to the show. Same here. I listen to it. That's why I don't edit the show. I know what I sound like. Anyways, but he wrote it in, and I was like, this is perfect. But now Todd's not here for me to tell him. See, the people want to know. But I've had this thought, James, if you're like y'all use Conicals that are hooked up to a glycol system, but y'all are still adamant about getting the temp of the Wort chilled to pitching temps before the Wort ever goes into the Conical. Is that
if in a perfect world in during the winter when the tap water's nice and cool, we can do that. The reason why we can't now is I can't get even with ice. And what I do is I use a counterflow chiller. And what I do is I've got a 10-gallon pot. I put the counterflow chiller in that pot, and I've got tap water running through it, and Wort's running through the tube on the inside of that counterflow. So you've got the Wort tube inside, a big tube has a little tube, which is the Wort in it. And you've got water flowing around it. So that's the heat transfer. And I'll go there's a place where you can get block ice for $2 for 20 pounds. So I'll get 40 pounds of ice, and I'll go ahead and let the chiller get it down usually to about 100 degrees. And then I'll turn the water off, because you don't want to do that, because right now it's been 100 degrees. We've had summer since May.
Yeah.
So we've had solid 100-degree days. We've probably had 30 already.
Yep.
And so the tap water coming out of the tap is about 90 to 92 degrees. And if you leave that on, you're wasting ice, because it's that hot water still running through the center. The ice is just, it's the coolness is being carried by the hot water. So it's not doing anything for the Wort. Long story short, it's all about BTUs and thermal transfer. So if your intention is to let it cool down just enough to where you can pump it in and let the chiller do the rest, whether you're using ice or you're using glycol, that would work. To me, I like to get it cool as quick as possible, because you don't want the bacteria time to develop. And sometimes that can happen if you have too long of a chill time. You know, you got to think it's that Wort's nice and sugary, and any kind of reason for bacteria to grow, that's if you're ever going to get an infection, that's usually when it's going to happen. So I try to get it down as quick as possible. Now, if you've got a 1-ton chiller and you're working with 5 to 10 gallons of Wort, you can probably chill that down real fast. But it's all about thermal transfer and the size of the BTUs of the air, the chiller. And with our chiller, we're running a 1/3 horse, and it's got like a 5-gallon chill. What would they call that? A water bath chiller?
Bath, yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically the evaporator coil submerged in glycol, and it's got 3 circuits. It's got a glycol pump circuit, and it's got two open coil circuits. So we could actually run 3 different types of. It was designed originally for soda. So you could run 2 flavors, and then you could run a chiller coil through that. And typically with soda, you're going to have a chiller coil surrounded by their bundle hose, and then you're going to typically chill the product like the bag-in-the-box syrup. You'll chill that to the head along with the CO2, the carbonated water. So you can do. I've done systems in the past where, like, if it's a single product system, I'll use the Glycol for the trunk line. I'll use one circuit for the CO2 water and one for the bag in the box. They join at the head. They stay cold the whole way. They maintain carbonation. But if you've got the same size chiller, and we're doing 15 to 18 gallons of wort, and I try to pump the hot wort directly into the conical, one, it's going to get super hot, and it's insulated, so it's going to contain that in there. And the only way to remove that heat is that coil in that water bath moving through 3/8 ID line.
Yeah.
So long story short, it's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of time to get it from boiling all the way down to where we want to be with loggers around 50 degrees. So it's just more convenient and quicker when I can chill it with $4 worth of 40 pounds worth of ice. We work with the ambient temperature of the water first. We get it to where we can get it. We can't get it. You're wasting water if it stalls out.
Yep.
Because it's not going to go any farther.
It can't, right? Yeah.
Turn your water off if you're using a counterflow, and then I put it in a ice water bath, and it'll go all the way back down to between 70 and 80. And once it hits in the mid 70 to 80 degree range, it's cool enough where I can pump it into my conical and really get it agitated and get some oxygen in there. And the whole time I've got my chiller on, running and cooled down, and I'll have it set at 50 degrees. And as soon as it goes in there, I start the pump running. The coil's already inserted inside the conical. I'm pumping through the blow off tube hole. That's where I'm pumping my wort in, and it'll take 15 minutes to get it to where I need it to be. But if you didn't do that, who knows how long it would take? It'd probably take way over an hour.
Yeah. See, and I'm glad that you're on here because you explain it in a way that's informational and not condescending. Because when I first mentioned it to Todd, he was like, "Really, You're going to ask that question to me? Why we don't just go right in it? Why don't you think?" I'm like, "No, I want you to explain it to me like I'm an idiot." "Well, we already know you're an idiot." But no, but you're right. That makes total sense that if you're going in piping hot, that thing's insulated. It's just a big old Yeti cup, right? Like it's not
right. And I mean, and if you have a jacket on, for your fermenter that you can take off, like it has Velcro on it, and you want to try that, and you do have an oversized chiller, or you've got a huge cooler and you can pack that thing with ice and you can really get it cold, it'll radiate some of that heat off the stainless steel on the outside into the ambient temperature, will leave the conical on the outside. Plus the transfer will take place through the chiller, but it'll heat that water bath up quick. So you may have to shut the flow off and let the chiller recover enough to where you're back cold again. Yeah,
that seems like a headache if you're doing this solo too, though, right?
But if you've got a big enough system, I did the math with Clay, and we were talking about doing the same thing with pumping through a chiller coil right into the keg or the
fermenter,
fermenter cold. And he did the math, and the BTUs were just nuts. That was when we were doing Big Bertha. We were doing 35, 40 gallon batches.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was almost the size of a small AC unit for a house, So he was like, "Yeah, we'd be better off with well water and ice." Yeah. And we were using that Blinkman
plate fermentator, chiller, the plate chiller. Pardon me. Yeah, the Therminator, right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah,
if you've
people
got
love
cold
it.
well water, it'll pump it out 68 degrees.
Yeah, you're the one who told me that. I was like, "No way."
Yeah, I mean, just solid. We would pump straight into the that big conical, and it worked really good. But when you have a water line running down the center of an asphalt street for 2 miles, after a while, it kind of turns into a thermal panel. That thing's radiating heat into the water line, and and by the time it comes up the building wall, and the outside building wall's hot. Yeah, you've got a hot water heater.
You do, absolutely. That's a good point. Like the way you described it. Well, but in your opinion, you're a man who's used both, And in the most ideal scenarios, do you prefer cold plate or do you like the immersion chiller method? Like, do you have a preference?
The cold plate, the plate chiller is way more efficient because there's more surface area to cool down. So you could almost, I think there's companies out there. What I would do if you were going to do something like that is I would get a simple pump and I would get an ice. You would need a pickup. You'd need to have a perforated screen like a bazooka tube. And that would be the inlet from your pump. And I would pump it through the plate chiller, ice cold, and then dump it right back into the cooler. So you take a big cooler, you take 20, 30, 40 pounds of ice. You have a bazooka tube, which is just an inlet with a screen. So you don't want to suck ice into the pump. And then, so you have that pump hooked up and you've got it on the inlet side of the cold side, the water side of the plate chiller. And then coming out, just a simple hose. You could even put a beer shank with a connection, like a faucet. Connection sells those brass heads.
Yep.
It's got a barbed fitting on it and a nut. And you can connect that up. That's what I use on our little cooler. And so that's going to be your outlet, and it's dumping back into the cooler. Well, it's filled up. When you first start, you're going to have more ice than water, but you have to have water because you have to have water moving through it. But when you get that super cold, you could even add salt in the system into the ice. Would drop the temperature of the water, just like if you were making ice cream.
Yep.
And then run that through your plate chiller. And then we'd have to have a pump for like a chugger pump to move the beer through the plate chiller, unless you're moving it with pressure. And then you have to have a pump. You'd have to have two pumps, pump for the coolant and then pump for the wort. And you just want to make sure that it can handle that kind of temperature. There's high temperature wort pumps. And I'm kind of getting in the weeds here, I understand. But that's, if you wanted to make a really quick, efficient way of cooling down, that's going to be your cheapest way. Your biggest expense would be the cooler and the pumps.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it is contextual, right? Because there are people who use like a counterflow, and and where they're at in the UK or whatever, it gets them 9 out of 10 times down to close enough to where they then put it into a temperature controlled vessel, and then start. I mean, it is very, like, everything we ever talk about on this show. There's no one right answer. Or right
way. And that's if you want to cool down absolutely the quickest way possible,
and that's what we all agree on.
You're going to do it with a plate chiller. And then let me back up. I personally, if I wanted to really do this fast, that's the way I would do it.
Yes.
It's a little more complicated. There's a lot more moving parts.
Hoppier
plate
beer
chillers are notoriously hard to clean because you got to back flush them. Because if you got any hop trub that goes through there, or any of that can get trapped, and then you can have potential contamination issues down the road with future batches. That's why I would always boil mine I had a big bean pot. It was like 10 gallons. And when we start the brew day, when we start crushing grain, I would fill that up with water. I would soak the plate chiller in there and put the lid on it and just let it simmer the whole day long. So I'm basically sterilizing it. If there's anything in there, it's all dead. So when I had a bracket mounted onto that big system, and we had cold well water, and we had everything hooked up, and we could literally pump it right into the Conical. When it was full, we would pitch our yeast. We also had an oxygen wand with a diffusion stone, and it wouldn't be unusual for us to get down to 1.006, 1006.
Really?
Yeah. We would get it. We would have very vigorous fermentation. We were over pitching cell numbers, and we didn't know what we were doing. I would just see something and take it and try it, you know. But the simplest way, and let me back up because I went in the weeds on the chiller. Or you could just take a 5-gallon bucket, like Todd does, fill it up with ice, get a stainless steel chilling coil, stick that in the bucket, and move your wort through that into your fermenter. And that works good too. And it's cheap.
And it is cheap. That is, I think that right now, not that this was a question taken because of it, but it's good timing for this upcoming weekend. There is a wort chiller sale on that combo pack, which is the way we've been using, the way we've been configuring our cool downs is that exact combo pack. If you go to catconnection.com and look up wort chillers, there's a video Todd did on there. I wasn't a part of that video, guys. The quality's real low. I don't know who did the camera. I didn't do that, but he does go over like the way we have an immersion And the way actually Todd does it is not even running Wort through it. He does just two ice baths.
Yeah, he uses it as a water bath.
Yeah, it's a water
water bath.
So he'll go down to about 100 degrees with just groundwater. And then he already, obviously, the last 15 minutes of the boil, the immersion chiller in the Wort has been sterilized. And then he'll then at 100 degrees, or if he can get as low as he can go with the groundwater, as fast as he can get it, it's typically about 100. Then he pours in the bucket ice over a Wort chiller that he's then running the water through that, and then up into the immersion chiller that way. It's a cool thing. He adds the ice at 100, and to watch how quick it comes down.
Yeah, it doesn't take long at all.
Doesn't take long at all. And again, though, that's also contextual, because like it depends how hot it is too outside in regards to how quick I feel like we're going through ice, or how hot his groundwater is and how long that might take us to get down to that temperature. So
sure. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. Basically, you just want to either a plate or a coil or some way, even a sink. That's when I was doing extract and mini mashes, I would always do 2.5 gallons of Wort at a boil. And I would keep the rest of my water in the freezer, and it would start getting kind of frosty. And I would set my Wort in my sink with ice and water. And of course, I'd always have my thermometer inside the Wort, or on the kettle in the Wort, because it was already sanitized, along with the spoon. And so I could stir it or shake it around and see where I'm at. And when I hit 80 or something like that, I would pour the rest of the chilled water in there to top off. But I would do that. I would pour the Wort into the fermenter, and then I would pour the cold water into the fermenter and splash it real good. And I always had real good luck doing it that way. And it would be, 65. Sometimes
that's how my dad and I, we copied your method, because you told me about that when we were doing extract. That's exactly what we did. It was fantastic. I was like, if you're doing extract, there's really no reason to do the whole 5 gallons, because that's just more Wort to chill. To chill, exactly. When you can just bring it to volume with really cold, RO water or whatever water.
Spring water, we used Ozarka.
Right.
You could get those 2.5 gallon
for nothing. Yeah.
For $6-7 for 2.5 gallons. So, a little over $10-12 for 5 gallons.
Yeah.
And I'd use one of those I'd get 2 of those in a gallon jug. And the first 2.5 gallons, that was my brew. That was what I boiled. And that's when I added my steeping grains and all of that. And that other one I would put in the freezer along with that single. Yeah. And then that's what I would top off, and I'd always have water left over.
Absolutely. And more importantly, you got the Wort chilled quick to pitch and put away. Because I think that's the worries. And I spoke definitively about 10 minutes ago. I said, we all agree on that, James. You want to get it down quick. There's going to be specifically certain Australians. There's like a homebrew club that trolls me. They're going to be like, nah, mate, what you do, you put it in the box, the cube, and you put the cube away for the weekend. And then you that method that Todd always said he could do before he knew that was actually what people do, where they do the boil and then they put it in this cube and let it sit there till it gets down to the temperature naturally, and then I don't know, man. Their toilets spin the wrong way down there too. I don't know, but you troll me on that one on my email. I dare to see what you write. But
or like Jonathan showed us, you get it to 90 and put a splending valve on it and let it.
That's what I was going to say. Is I hear Jonathan in my ears screaming, "Just use Kavite or just use pressure." Like I hear him screaming that. Like, why bother? We're living in the Wild West, man, right now, brewing it, and I love it. I love it.
If it works for you, that's exactly the way you need to do it.
I told you, man. I'm reiterating before I wrap up the show. If that 3470 batch under pressure in the garage is a hit, that's all I'm doing for the next few batches. I'm gonna tweak a recipe on that, because his version was delicious. It wasn't just like this is pretty good considering the parameters of your brew. It was like convincing, it was a convincing pills. I hear you, Jonathan. You don't have to message me that you're screaming. I hear you screaming already, and we haven't even published this episode yet. But anyways, thank you so much, other Jonathan, for submitting that question. James, that's all I've got for us this week, my friend. One thing, first, I want to tell you, I appreciate you reminding me we had to record it. And my little lizard brain, I thought we recorded it yesterday with Todd. And I was like, oh, no, I just had to publish it. And I was like, oh, wait, we didn't record it yesterday with Todd at all. We drank a lot Tuesday, and it's Thursday now. And I've been... Yeah, I know. I'm preaching to the choir. We had a good time, though. We had a good time.
I had a great time.
We did here's a group. I took a group photo that is not going to see the light of day because Todd said, what did his friends say? It looked like a Montreal bathhouse or something. We took
Russian bathhouse.
Yeah, we took a selfie of the three of us in the pool together with our custom-made pool glasses that Todd made us plasticware because he's getting so pissed that I'm taking the whiskey bottles up to the pool and drinking it like I'm some, kingpin or something. But also, before I wrap up, I want to remind people, because I didn't bring it up in the small talk, the June recipe kits are shipping next week. We had an issue with the corn flakes. Long story short, weevils. We don't want to do that to y'all. So the corn had weevils in it. Everything else is ready to go. When the bag comes in, I'm going to come up for the day, get them packed out. So it should be around Wednesday the 6th or Thursday the 7th. So the June recipes will go out then. And then next week, we'll announce July's recipe. But spoiler, it's probably going to be this Kvike Pale Ale, or give you the option in a Kvike pseudo lager. We're tinkering with stuff. We're tinkering. We wanted to get this experiment's going to be done before we record next week. So we'll have some options and some insight. But anyways, Mr. Carlson, I appreciate your time, my friend, and I'll catch you later.
Enjoyed it. All right.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or be Todd's best friend and leave a voicemail to 325-305-6107. Brew better beer with the new Grainfather G40 all-in-one electric system, available now at grainfather.com. Also, get a free pack of Imperial Yeast with premium recipes from us when you join our Trub Club. Go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thanks for listening.